you all here. I am incredibly excited. Thank you for coming a day early to the union so you can join us for what I know is going to be an absolutely wonderful program. It is my very special pleasure to introduce Laylee Lopine, PhD, the Executive Director of the Wellesley Centers for Women and a Professor of Africana Studies here at the college. Laylee is a superstar in every way, and I'm delighted that you will all have a chance to get to know her a bit this afternoon and to learn more about the remarkable work of WCW. As most of you are aware, I have been deeply involved with the centers over many years, 36 to be exact, initially serving on the Board of Overseers of the Stone Center, and then on the Council of Advisors as of 1995, when the Wellesley Centers for Women came into existence. 5 years ago, Wellesley's Board of Trustees pulled off the biggest surprise and the biggest honor of my life when they named the Executive Director position for me. So Laylee's full title, which is the proper way to introduce her, is Catherine Stone Kaufman, 67, Executive Director of the Wellesley Centers for Women. Very cool. Laylee joined WCW 5 years ago in 2012 after many years as a faculty member at Georgia State University and at the University of Georgia. She holds a PhD in psychology on lifespan human development from Temple University, a master's in psychology from Penn State, a bachelor's degree from another fine women's institution, Spelman College in Atlanta, where she majored in philosophy. Laylee has published 2 books, The Womanist Reader in 2006 and The Womanist Idea in 2012. Her third book, and I have no idea where she finds the time to do this, Womanism Rising, is forthcoming. Laylee has served as a Fulbright Specialist at the University of Liberia, as well as a Contemplative Practice Fellow of the Center for Contemplative Mind in Society. Currently, she sits on the Board of Directors of the Global Fund for Women and other organizations that support women around the world. In addition to her books, Laylee has published over 35 journal articles and book chapters on topics as diverse as the history of psychology, social identity and identity development, gender and sexuality, activism, and even hip-hop studies. She has taken this gem called the WCW and has moved it to even greater heights. So it is my pleasure now to introduce you to this woman whom I admire so greatly, Laylee Lopine.
Well, I have to admit that I have to take a moment to tell you how important Kathy has been to me. My walk as the director of the Wellesley Centers for Women would not have been the same if I hadn't arrived into her welcoming arms when I first got here. She has been such a guide star to my leadership of the center, so much institutional memory about the Wellesley Centers for Women, and has just been a wonderful friend in so many ways. So I thank your whole class for her. She's been wonderful. Let's give her a round. I have to say, the class of 67 is a truly vibrant class that really occupies a very special place, not only in the history of Wellesley, but in the history of women. I'm sure you all remember what the times were like when you were going through school here, and the kind of transitions that women were going through. And the fact that you have been such trailblazers and change makers in your own life is just an amazing testament not only to Wellesley College, but to who each of you are individually. So I'm very delighted that we have this association between the class of 67 and the Wellesley Centers for Women, and I actually want to talk about the Wellesley Centers for Women in case you don't already know a lot about it, and I want to talk about the internships program. But before I do that, I want to thank a bunch of people who have been very important on this journey. I've already said that the class of 67 has been fabulous, and 25 years of partnership. I mean, that has just been really remarkable. You generously supported us by setting up the class of 67 internship 25 years ago at your 25th reunion, and it's just been a gift that kept on giving, and I'm going to say more about that. You're going to hear more about it once the interns and mentors come up to the podium. I want to thank Matthew Myers Johansson, Ann Conley Weaver, and again, Kathy Stone Kaufman, for all of their hard work to make this event possible, inviting the whole class to join us for this special event. I want to also thank class president Elaine Wu. Elaine, I know you're out there somewhere. There you are. Okay, because she's really been a champion of this relationship and a champion of the class of '67 internship. And she spread awareness about what we do and about the internship, and she's really galvanized support from all of you for this joint effort that we have. I also want to thank incoming class president Elizabeth Bates Johnson. There she is. Thank you. As I'm sure you all know, she has helped us keep this connection and momentum going, and we're going to hear more about that as the program progresses. I would like to thank Judith Sleeper. Judith, are you in the room? No. Okay. But Judith has served as the class of '67 representative on the WCW Internship Selection Committee since the creation of the internship. So if you can imagine how much work that's been, we all owe her a debt of gratitude as well. I also want to thank all of today's speakers and panelists. I want to begin with the former class of '67 interns who you'll all meet very shortly, Natalie Russ, Temple Price, and Nikita Salati, as well as their mentors, Nan Stein, Linda Charmarman, and Tracy Gladstone. And last but not least, it's important that I thank the staff of WCW who helped us put this day together, and that would include Kajal Fitzgerald over here, Donna Tambasio, who is, there she is in the back taking pictures, also Megan Cassidy, who's our filmmaker today, and also Marnie Saltalamacchia and Christy Kim, who are in the back office but have done so much to make today possible. So, now, let's turn to the Wellesley Centers for Women, and I'm going to give you the Wellesley Centers for Women 101. We are shaping a better world through research and action, something we've been doing for over 40 years now. I'm going to give you a little background in history, and I'm going to see if you recognize anybody you know in this picture. Can you tell? Far right there?
Yes.
In 1974, the Center for Research on Women was founded by Wellesley College President Margaret. That's where we date our beginning from. All right. There she is again. In 1981, the Stone Center for Developmental Services and Studies, also known shorthand as the Stone Center, was founded with a gift from Robert S. and Grace W. Stone. So, in 1995, the Stone Center and the CRW merged to become the Wellesley Centers for Women. A lot of times people ask me, why is there that S, Wellesley Centers for Women? And I say we have this illustrious history of two different centers that each in their own right have done some great things. When they came together, we wanted to reflect that history in our name. So that's why we are the Wellesley Centers for Women. And you can see in the old logos, we used to put everybody's logo still up there, and then we moved to a new logo. But today, we are with this new scheme. The Wellesley Center for Women today is the largest and one of the oldest academic women and gender-focused research institutes in the United States and in the world. We occupy 3 buildings here on campus. Cheever House and Wabin House are both sort of off campus, and then the Stone Center, actually I mislabeled those. The middle one is the Stone Center, and the one on the right is Wabin House. How did I do that? But we occupy these 3 buildings because we have quite a large workforce. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as well. But historically, Cheever House was the home of the Center for Research on Women, the Stone Center was the home of the Stone Center, and Wabin House has been used for a variety of things over time. So now I want to talk about our mission and vision at the Wellesley Centers for Women. Our mission is to advance gender equality, social justice, and human well-being through high-quality research, theory, and action programs. So we have these 3 big goals: gender equality, social justice, and human well-being. Research, theory, and action are the ways that we see to get there. That's our area of expertise. But in terms of the vision we're working towards, we envision a world of justice, peace, and well-being for women and girls, children and youth, families and communities, in all their diversity around the world. So I want to talk about who's at the heart of our work, who drives our work, WCW's researchers and project directors. Currently, there are 18 research scientists and project directors that make up our core workforce, with an additional 8 senior scholars, who are generally research scientists or project directors who have retired but have continued a connection, or some scholars who are seeking an institutional home and have been affiliated with the Wellesley Centers for Women, even though they do independent work outside of WCW. Our scholars are supported by a core administrative workforce of 15 who are responsible for finance and administration, development, and communications and external relations. Additionally, many scholars have support staff working as research or project associates, researcher project administration, casual wage assistants, and students. So altogether, we're a workforce of over 65 people. So let me tell you about our big 5 research areas. Education, broadly conceived, everything from early care and education, aka daycare, all the way on up to high school and beyond. Our work covers the spectrum of education, the spectrum of age groups, and from a variety of approaches, including focus on literacy, focus on social emotional education, focus on out-of-school time, focus on various aspects of education. We have economic security as another of our core themes. This has been true from the very beginning. We focus on the economic security of women and families, factors that affect working women and parenting and things related to things like the gender wage gap. You might have seen some of our recent work in the news. I'll point that out. Another big area for us, and this goes back to the history of the Stone Center, is mental health. We continue to do mental health work, and because we'll have one of our mental health researchers presenting today, I'm not going to say too much more about that. We also have a big focus on youth and adolescent development and gender-based violence. Now, I want to point out, for those of you who live in the area and haven't visited us much, that we have a weekly lunchtime seminar at the Wellesley Centers for Women in the fall and in the spring, every Thursday at 12 o'clock. And people can come and hear about the research that's going on. The researchers present on their new work, and sometimes even students and interns present with them. We also have several action programs. These are our programs that are translating research into action, translating our innovative theory into action. You might know about the Jean Baker Miller Training Institute, which at this point is one of our legacy programs. But we also have the National Institute on Out-of-School Time, which studies every aspect of out-of-school time and also works with those in the field to develop better programming and assess quality. We have the National Seed Project, which works on multicultural and social justice education. It's a professional development program for teachers and others. We have Open Circle, which is a social emotional learning curriculum for K through 5 children and the communities that support them. And then we have Women's Review of Books, which is the longest standing and longest running review of women's books in the United States. We review all kinds of books by women, for women, about women. So we wouldn't be standing here today, 40 plus years, if we didn't have a history of successful funding. These are just a few of the funders who have funded our researchers and project directors at the Wellesley Centers for Women. We have people who get funding from federal agencies. We have people who get funding from large and small foundations. We have people who get funding from the states, sometimes even from cities. There are occasionally corporate funders. We have a wide diversity of funders that keeps our good work going, and I just wanted to show you a few and give you a sense of the breadth of that domain. But if you look statistically at the success rates of our researchers and project directors in securing grants, they are above national average. They're above the averages for most of the agencies. WCW has really cemented its reputation as a place that generates quality research, and so that has benefited our longevity and sustainability. We also have special consultative status at the United Nations. In 2001, under my predecessor Susan Bailey, we gained special consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the UN, making us an official NGO of the UN. And what that allows us to do is not only to present whenever we like to at the NGO forum of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women meetings, but also allows us to submit statements to the UN on issues that we care about. So now I just want to mention another of our important supports, those who champion our work, WCW's Council of Advisors. The WCW Council of Advisors serves to bring our work to the world and bring the world to WCW. The current membership stands at 15, including 2 of your own, Kathy Kaufman and Beth Johnson, who have given wonderful service on the Council of Advisors. The Council brings together the expertise of corporate and NGO leaders, lawyers, academics, media professionals, and a variety of others. They've brought publicity networks and funds to WCW. They are integral to our public outreach as well as to our stature. And of course, I couldn't fail to recognize the generosity of the many friends we have, so many of you in this room. We are amply supported by a wonderful nationwide network of friends. And every year, gifts from our friends support a variety of our activities, from research to international partnerships to general operations. We're fortunate to have both alumni and non-alumni friends because our reputation as a premier research institute for women, an innovator of groundbreaking theory around women, brings a lot of attention from all sectors and spheres. So I just want to take this moment to thank you for all that you do for the Wellesley Centers for Women. One of the things that's really important in our work is making sure that our research reaches external audiences. If you know anything about academic publishing, you know that when you produce a high-quality journal article or study, typically it goes into an academic journal that is not widely read. If that's where our research stopped, then we wouldn't be having our maximum impact in the world. We have to make sure that we can translate that research into other outlets. So this is just one example of some very recent media within the last few weeks. From Sari Kerr, who's our senior economist at the Wellesley Centers for Women. She did some innovative work on the gender wage gap, and she was cited in both the New York Times and the Boston Globe within the last week or two. I also would like to show another example, and that is a recent study of women's leadership in the theater industry that was done by Sumru Erkut and Inika Cedar. They not only had a wonderful feature story on WBUR, which is public radio in this area, but they've also had mentions and discussions of their work in numerous online news outlets as well as theater outlets of varying kinds, journals, websites, and so on. So it's very important that our work goes beyond the journal article, beyond the book chapter, out into the world, and we are lucky that because of the kind of infrastructure that we have at the Wellesley Centers for Women, we're able to help the researchers get the work out there. In fact, Donna Tambasia, who's in the room with us now, has been very instrumental in helping researchers figure out how to get their work out, get it into the right hands, and make sure that we are in the media on a very frequent basis. So now I want to shift gears and talk for the reason we all came here. The Class of '67 Internship Fund, a momentous gift that was established 25 years ago, and which, as I said, has kept on giving. Now, let me give a little background before I talk about the Class of '67 internship specifically. Working with students has always been a cornerstone of WCW's mission. We've always worked with students as research and project assistants, and as with the internship that your class started, we now have 5 endowed internships. That was a new development thanks to your impetus. In addition to gaining valuable research training, which I honestly would say is similar to the training that students would get in graduate school, we're able to give undergraduate students a level of training that's similar to the kind of mentorship you would get from a graduate advisor. Our student interns and assistants go on to present at conferences. These are peer-reviewed conferences, the same as our researchers would present at. They also present here on campus at conferences like Ruhlman and Tanner. They publish papers in scholarly journals and books, often in collaboration with their mentors. They often go on to attend graduate or professional school, and you're going to hear a little bit about that from our panel today. They generate measurable social impact, and they also give back to WCW and the college. So it's actually a very wonderful circle of activity. Within the last year, WCW worked with over 30 students, including our WCW student ambassadors, which is a group of students that works to bring the information of WCW just to the campus student body while the students are enrolled, and also to give us feedback about what the students think about the Wellesley Centers for Women, what they know, and where we need to increase information. And one of the wonderful things that the student ambassadors do is they help bring in the interns, because they hold a speed dating event to link students with researchers every February. So it's been a wonderful gift to help us generate a lot of enthusiasm about and publicity about our internships. So now, as I pointed out, the Class of '67 are the founders of WCW's internships. With a generous gift of $50,000 at your 25th reunion, the Wellesley College Class of '67 established the very first internship at WCW in 1992. Since this time, 24 Wellesley students have completed their year as a Class of '67 intern, and we just selected the 25th intern for next year. Class of '67 interns have collaborated with a number of different researchers at WCW and studied a range of topics, leading to numerous presentations and publications. With this 50th reunion, the program is expanding. The Class of '67 internship, as I said, has led to publications as well as to social impact. And even though we're going to be having a panel and hearing much more in depth about the mentorship and the work, I just want to pull out a few other examples that I think are high impact that really show why this internship has made a difference. So in terms of publication, the 2006-2007 intern Gabrielle Abusselman, 08, co-authored a chapter, Children as Crime Victims, with WCW's Nan Stein, who is here today, and you'll hear from her again. in The Child, an encyclopedic companion published by University of Chicago Press. Obviously a very reputable scholarly press, great accomplishment for this mentor and mentee pair. The 2008 and 2009 intern, Margaret Tiernan, class of 09, co-authored the report Disability Rights, Gender and Development, a Tool for Action, with WCW's Rangita de Silva de Alves, which was published by the Secretariat for the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities of the Department of the Economic and Social Affairs in the United Nations Population Fund. So this was actually another very heavy-hitting document that was produced by one of the class of 67 interns. I mean, I just think it's amazing. So let's talk about a little bit of the social impact that some of the interns have had. 1999-2000 intern Colleen McDonald, class of 00, worked on the Navy Family Study with WCW's Linda Williams, where she investigated whether discrepancies between mothers and children's reports of partner violence were related to the children's anxiety. This study of family violence was used by the Navy to develop, evaluate, and improve the Navy's family advocacy program. So obviously there was the social impact on reducing domestic violence in a very large sector of American society. Also in 2003 and 2004, intern Caitlin Blazer, class of 04, helped organize the 2004 International Conference on Violence Against Women, which brought together 130 delegates from over 30 countries. And I want to say, it was quite a big deal to get that conference together, because in some of the countries, the presenters who came to talk about their work and who were active in the trenches actually had to be secretive about their participation because of the risk to the work that they were doing. So our student helped create a forum where these people from around the world were able to come together, share best practices, share insights, share research with each other, and that was such an important contribution, again, from the class of 67 internships. So, in sum, we owe a debt of gratitude, and the Wellesley Centers of Women thanks the Wellesley College Class of 67 for its generosity in establishing the Class of 67 Internship Fund at the Wellesley Centers for Women. So I just want to clap for you. All right, so now it's time for the thing we've all been waiting for, which is the panel. I'm going to introduce the panelists one by one and ask that they come up and take their seats as I introduce them. The first person I'm going to introduce is Tracy Gladstone, PhD, who is an associate director, a senior research scientist, and the director of the Stone Primary Prevention Initiatives at the Wellesley Centers for Women at Wellesley College. She's also an assistant in psychology at the Boston Children's Hospital. She's an instructor at Harvard Medical School and a research scientist at Judge Baker Children's Center. So she does it all. And she brings it home to WCW. Dr. Gladstone received her BA at Brown University and her doctorate in clinical psychology at Emory University. She completed her postdoctoral training at Judge Baker Children's Center and Boston Children's Hospital. She holds a health service provider psychologist license in Massachusetts and has been trained in evidence-based clinical prevention and intervention protocols, which is very significant to some of the work she may mention. For the past 20 years, Dr. Gladstone has focused her research on the prevention of depression in children and families at risk, particularly on the development of accessible interventions that support this goal. She's also conducted a pilot study to develop, implement, and evaluate an evidence-based depression prevention program targeting women recovering from fistula repair surgery in Gondar, Ethiopia. So she's going global with this depression prevention work. With the support of the Metro West Health Foundation, she's been working with the Navy Public Schools to develop and implement a large-scale depression and suicide screening and prevention program for middle and high school students, and I can already tell you it's had an impact in our local community. So Dr. Gladstone has co-authored a number of peer-reviewed manuscripts reporting the results of her research endeavors. She's taken an active role in teaching about depression, prevention, and intervention in local, national, and international settings. So Tracy, come on down. Okay, now I'm going to introduce her intern partner, Nikita Salati, class of 16, is currently a legislative correspondent for Congressman Brad Schneider of Illinois. She graduated from Wellesley College with a degree in neuroscience and women's and gender studies with a concentration in health, science, and bioethics. While at Wellesley, Nikita was a fellow of the Madeleine K. Albright Institute and the Anchor Point Fellowship in Global Leadership. She kept very busy. After graduation, Nikita worked on the Hillary Clinton campaign as a field organizer in Youngstown, Ohio. Nikita will begin medical school at Feinberg School of Medicine at Northwestern University in the fall. As a physician, she plans to work with women in low-income communities and hopes to develop innovative methods to reduce healthcare disparities. Nikita was selected as the 2013-2014 Class of 1967 intern and as the 2014-2015 Morse Fellowship intern. She's immensely privileged to work at the Wellesley Centers for Women and with Dr. Tracy Gladstone. So Nikita, all right. The next mentor I'll introduce is Linda Charmarman, PhD. She's a research scientist at the Wellesley Centers for Women and a former National Institute of Health, Child Health and Human Development, or NICHD, postdoctoral scholar. She received her PhD in Human Development and Education from the University of California, Berkeley's Graduate School of Education. She's been a principal investigator on work from numerous grantors. Dr. Charmarman's research centers on positive youth development, particularly around social media use, a new and cutting-edge topic. Recent interests include how social networking communities influence adolescent risk or resiliency, particularly in communities that face stigma, such as race or ethnicity or sexual orientation. Her devotion to mentoring students in the rigorous scientific research process is exemplified in her publication and presentation track record with current and former students. For instance, she recently co-authored a book chapter on how women of color cultivate virtual social capital with her class of 67 intern, Temple Price, who you'll be hearing about in just a few seconds. This year, Dr. Charmarman and her current student interns co-authored a chapter accepted for publication on gender and sexual orientation stereotypes in the media, and has submitted for review a journal article about adolescent sexual risk and substance use. Her commitment to mentoring the next generation of research scientists will be featured in an upcoming scholar story by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So, Linda, come on down. Introduce her mentee partner, Temple Price, class of 13. She's currently a master's candidate in clinical mental health counseling, at Xavier University in Louisiana. As a class of 67 intern at the Wellesley Centers for Women, Temple assisted Dr. Linda Charmarman with research on how young people of color identify with media. Temple has presented on that research at conferences of the American Psychological Association, the National Communication Association, and the Association of Black Psychologists. Temple has also participated in research on women in recovery from substance abuse at DePaul University and public health research at 504 HealthNet in New Orleans. Currently, she is a research assistant in the Center for Traumatic Stress and Research at Xavier, where she's working under Dr. Circe A. West Olatunji on a study funded by the National Science Foundation on African American engineering students and stereotype threats. So Temple, come on down. So, the last of our mentor scholars I'll introduce is Nan Stein, ED. She's a senior research scientist at the Wellesley Centers for Women, where she focuses on gender violence in schools, including sexual harassment and teen dating violence. For over 30 years, Dr. Stein has conducted research on sexual harassment in K-12 schools and often serves as an expert witness in Title IX and sex discrimination, sexual harassment lawsuits in U.S. federal courts. She worked on the Shifting Boundaries Research and Intervention since its inception in 2005 through all phases of its implementation and evaluation. Dr. Stein is a former middle school social studies teacher, so she knows the crowd she studies. Also a drug and alcohol counselor, and has written and developed curricula on bullying, known as Bully Proof. She's also authored curricula on sexual harassment, flirting, or hurting, and has published dozens of scholarly articles in educational and law review journals. Her book, Classrooms and Courtrooms, Facing Sexual Harassment in K-12 Schools, was published in 1999. In 2007, she received the Outstanding Contribution to Education Award from the Harvard University Graduate School of Education, where she received her Doctorate of Education in 1981. So Nan Stein, come on down. Last but not least, I would like to introduce Dr. Stein's mentee partner, Natalie Rust, class of 10, is a doctoral candidate in clinical psychology at Williams James College, formerly the Massachusetts School of Professional Psychology in Newton, Massachusetts. While at Wellesley, Natalie studied psychology and peace and justice studies and held several summer internships in the field of domestic violence, working primarily with teenage survivors. As a class of '67 intern, Natalie assisted Dr. Nan Stein with her research on sexual harassment and gender violence in schools, which influenced her future clinical focus. After graduation, Natalie was trained in community organizing and conflict resolution modalities. She worked for a Boston-based conflict transformation organization, the Public Conversations Project, now known as Essential Partners, where she developed and delivered trainings in dialogue facilitation, including one at Wellesley College for students, faculty, and staff. She then began doctoral study and has spent the last 2 years at the Brandeis Counseling Center, where she's collaborated with the campus Rape Crisis Center in providing both individual and group care to survivors of sexual violence. She plans to focus her clinical career on the treatment of trauma, including gender-based trauma in schools. Natalie's doctoral research is on racial trauma and the role of white psychologists, the role that white psychologists can play in the racial justice movement. So, Natalie, please join us. All right, so we're going to begin this panel with each of the pairs taking a few minutes to talk about their experience together, to talk about the evolution of their mentoring relationship, and thinking about some of the things that occurred in the course of their working together. So I'll turn it over now to Nikita and Tracy.
Sure. Great. Can I stand because I have to see?
Certainly.
No. I can't. I'm good, but not that good. I have to see the slides. Okay, that's great. So I'm going to start by describing, in general, the project that Nikita and I worked on together, and then Nikita will talk more specifically about the work that the piece of the project that she really focused on. And I'm going to talk fast because there's a lot that I want to say. It's a big project. So before I actually begin, I want to just mention that this was an effort. It's a multi-site study. It's funded by the National Institute of Mental Health. And so my co-PI is Benjamin Voorhees at the University of Illinois in Chicago. He's the chief of pediatrics there. And we have a team at Northwestern that's working on our the analytic piece with us. So it's a large team, and it really is a collaborative effort. The focus of this work is on adolescent depression. And as I imagine many of you know, adolescent depression is a tremendous problem. At any given point in time, 5, 6, 7% of all teens will be experiencing an episode of major depression. So I'm not talking about just having a bad day. This is actually depression that interferes with their functioning, and kids have trouble going to school. There's a large connection between depression and suicidal behavior in teens. So it really does have dramatic effects on kids. And kids who develop an episode of depression during childhood are much more likely. Depression is an episodic illness, so they will continue to experience problems with depression throughout the life course. Relapse rates for youth depression are really quite astonishing. So about 75% of all kids who develop an episode of depression and recover from it will experience a subsequent episode within 5 years. So that means that, as even kids who are treated for depression are doing better, as they're leaving high school, as they're entering that next step, maybe going to college, maybe going into the workforce, they're going to experience another episode. It really will have long-term effects on them. This gives you a sense of some of the short-term and the long-term effects of depression. Really, it affects families, it affects work functioning, and as I said, because it's an episodic illness, the effects continue throughout the life course. So Catch It is a primary care, internet-based depression prevention program that targets at-risk adolescents. And by at-risk, I mean teens who have experienced a depressive disorder in the past, or who are experiencing some symptoms of depression, but not a current depressive illness. So kids who are experiencing some symptoms of depression are at increased risk for having an episode, a full-blown episode down the road. So this is a program. It's on the computer. It includes a parent piece. So parents also can go to a computer, and it has videos. It's all kinds of exercises. It combines evidence-based depression prevention programs. So cognitive behavioral programs, interpersonal psychotherapy programs, behavioral activation, activity scheduling programs. And it walks kids through and parents through a series of modules. And the hope is that kids who participate in this program, that they're introduced to the program through their primary care doctor, and the hope is that kids who participate will be less likely over time to experience an episode of depression. So we can take kids that are having some symptoms, give them some strategies to manage their low mood, so hope that they won't develop an episode of depression in the future. An early pilot study of this intervention showed that kids, you can just see over time, the kids who got the intervention had a decrease in depressive symptoms over time, and that decrease was sustained out to about a year. So based on this early pilot work, my colleague and I were funded by the National Institute of Mental Health to evaluate this intervention relative to a health education control internet program. So half the kids that we enroll through primary care have access to this catch-it intervention, and half of the kids get essentially a sham intervention. It basically talks about basic well child care, workplace safety, wearing a bike helmet. That's the kind of material that half the kids get, and then half the kids actually get access to a program that we hope will decrease their likelihood of developing depression over time. This just gives you a sense of the study design. We had hoped to recruit 200 kids across Chicago and Boston for the catch-it intervention and 200 kids for the health education intervention. We got pretty close. Eligible teens were 13 to 18. They had current symptoms of depression or a past episode of depression or both. But what's important to remember is that we did not enroll kids who were currently depressed. Because this was a prevention trial, we did not enroll kids that already met criteria for depression because those kids required treatment. So they needed more than they could get from this program, especially because we were randomizing kids into what we expected. Half the kids would get something that we don't expect will work. So we wouldn't want to put kids in this program if they really need treatment. This just gives you a sense of what the intervention looks like, the active intervention, and the program, you can see those little bubbles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's different sections. Each section includes a few modules. As kids work through the program, and parents too, they're asked to answer questions. They enter characters into the program, and they develop goals. They work towards their goals by working through the program. And this gives you a sense of the more boring health ed website, which is what we were going for. We don't want them to like this too much, but it really just gives them some basic information. And this just gives you a sense of our sample. So we ended up randomizing 369 teens across the 2 sites, which we're really very excited about. It makes it relative to other depression prevention programs out there. It makes it really one of the largest. And to get those kids, we did a lot of screen in primary care offices, and we also sent a lot of letters to teens telling them about the program and inviting them to participate. This gives you a sense of our sample. I just really want to highlight that it's a very diverse sample. So only 43% of our kids identify as white, non-Hispanic. And the kids average about 15. This just gives you a sense of website usage. So I'm going to show you some slides that just give you a sense of how much kids are using the program. And you'll see that I talk about modules completed, so how many modules the kids worked on. I talk about how much time they spent on the program. And then I talk about the number of characters typed in. So that really gives us a sense of how actively they were engaged in the website, if they actually answered questions and established goals, etc. So this gives you a sense of the number of modules completed. You can see that for teens, well, what you can basically see here is that kids are completing more health ed modules than they are catch-it modules. So that does sound pretty bad, but I'm going to show you the next one, it's a little bit better. Basically, you can see the parents in both groups, health ed and catch-it parents are completing about the same number of modules, but the kids are completing many more of the health ed modules, but that's because the health ed modules are really quick, and they're just really quick. They take a few minutes, whereas the catch-it modules take a lot more time. So if you look at the amount of time that they spend on the website, you can see that the kids are spending much more time with the catch-it website than they are with the health ed website. So they're really spending a couple hours working on this program. And you can see the same thing for the parents. And this just gives you a sense of the number of characters that kids are typing in, and you can see that kids actually are very actively engaging. And the kids in Boston engage much more actively than the kids in Chicago. I think there's a number of reasons for that. I'd like to say it's because we're just really awesome in Boston. And we are pretty good, but I think the larger part is that I think that the Chicago sample is it's much more diverse. It's a real inner city sample, and we have a range of kids in Boston, but I think that that could be part of it. And I also think that the Chicago team was maybe a little bit less cohesive than the Boston team. We were a little bit more nurturing of our subjects, and I think that they engaged a little more actively because of that. And I just want to show you this, so I can't show you any group effects because we don't yet have data to tell you if the kids who got the catch intervention did better or less likely to become depressed than the kids who got the health ed intervention. We actually have those. Next time we talk, I'll tell you. But for now, I don't have it. But I can show you that across groups, we did see a decrease in depressive symptoms. And this could mean any number of things. It could just mean that being in a trial of this nature, it identifies kids as at risk and it gives them a sense of that they're doing something. So that could be accounting for the decrease in symptoms. It also could just be that the assessment procedure, I mentioned that we're pretty nurturing in Boston, but even in Chicago as well, just the act of having assessments with social workers over time, checking in with how they're doing in their mood and their functioning also could have an effect on decreasing symptoms. So we'll have to see. I really hope that the kids who got catch it did better, but I don't know the answer to that question yet. But Nikita actually came, when Nikita came to work with me, she kind of focused on a smaller piece, and I'm going to let her share that with you now.
Hello. So as Tracy mentioned, there were sort of two arms of this PATH study, the health ed arm and the catch it arm. So when I was working with Tracy, I focused specifically on the catch it arm. So the people who are getting, the teens who are getting this specific intervention to prevent mental, excuse me, to prevent an episode of depression. And then within that catch it arm, I was focusing on half of the teens. Okay, perfect. I was focusing on half of the teens specifically in our Boston site, so catch teens in our Boston site. These teens had a similar mean age, still a very diverse group, around 15. And one of the first things that we found is when we were looking at these catch teens and how many modules they, how many modules they completed against their depressive symptom score, what we found is that teens with a greater depressive symptom score, so who were more symptomatic, were completing, I'm talking about a different slide, so I just got ahead of myself. So here we're looking at specifically how depressive symptoms between teens and parents are related to each other. And so we see here that both when parents are more depressed, teens are more depressed, show more symptoms. And that's something that is also pretty well corroborated in the literature. There are people who have found this in the past, and so we're excited to see that again. We also found that teens who are more depressed, who show more symptoms, complete fewer modules. And so that sort of tells us a little bit about engagement and knowing that, about symptoms and how these modules, then the characteristics of the modules sort of facilitate teens using them more or not using them more. That's some really useful information. And we found the same trend when we looked at parents. So parents who were more depressed were less likely to use these modules. So parents who were more depressed completed an average, fewer than 2 modules, and parents who were more depressed completed an average of fewer than 2 or more modules. So this might mean that depression is a moderator for this intervention usage, and so that's also a really important thing to know. Then we also looked at how teens and parents' usage of our intervention were related to each other. So teens who complete more modules, teens complete more modules when parents also complete more modules. And I just want to talk about one caveat here. We didn't specifically look at the relationship between teen depression scores. So as I spoke about before, teens who are more depressed were in families with parents who are more depressed. So that's something that we're continuing to look at. But we did see overall that teens who complete more modules complete more modules when parents complete more modules. I'm so sorry, I'm getting over a cold. So it tells us that investment with parents is also really important here in getting teens to be engaged. We can't just focus on teens' usage of our module system, but also need to make sure that parents are engaged and invested in this program to sort of to help teens and facilitate them using this as well. We also see that teen usage increases with fewer parent symptoms. So when parents are more depressed, teens use these modules less. And that the same thing happens when teens are more depressed. So parent usage decreases, parent usage of our module system decreases when parent usage increases when with fewer teen symptoms. There we go. So there's a number of pieces of literature that talk about very similar things, similar usage engagement in our module system and depression symptoms score. And because we're running low on time, I'm going to skip on this one, but I really do want to just focus on next steps. This is something that Tracy and I presented at the Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies back in November. And so again, we are just looking at Catch It Teens in the Boston site. So now that we have Chicago teens and Boston teens, we're reanalyzing this data to look at exactly how teen usage of our Catch It system and their depressive symptom scores, as well as parent usage and parent depressive symptom scores, are related across sites, so in both Boston and Chicago, and you know, re-looking at that data and seeing if these conclusions are continuing to hold through. I also just want to talk a little bit about what people are saying about this, about the Catch It program, because I think that's a really interesting piece as well. And we've gotten some incredibly positive feedback from teens and parents who've used it, and people are saying that they love it, that it's been really helpful in connecting them to their teen. Something that's, you know, things that are really meaningful to hear from parents and teens, especially when they are symptomatic like that. So it's been a really wonderful experience. I've learned a ton. And so with that synopsis, I'm going to hand it on to Temple and Linda.
Get to my slides. Thank you so much for being here today so they can talk about some of our favorite topics. Just two out of the projects that I've been working on ever since I've been here for, I guess, 11 years now. Educational Equity for Girls of Color and Media and Identity Project, which are projects that Temple was really integral in this process. In fact, she was there at almost the beginning stages. And so it was really important to have that student insight and let's see what the next slide is. Okay, so I'm going to let Temple take away what she was involved in during the year, that crazy year she had with me. So I worked with Linda during the 2012-2013 school year. That was my senior year of class of 13. And I almost forgot about everything we got to do together. Only 4 years ago, but there were things in these slides that I was like, oh yeah, we did do that together. And what was really interesting about working on those two different projects is that I almost was at a different point with each. So with educational equity for girls of color, Linda had already worked on preparing a documentary, and I came in, it was finished. The project was done, but I got to learn a lot about dissemination and making sure that people saw the research and saw the final product versus the media and identity study. I got to be there from the very beginning stages and even work on putting together the survey. So what we did, we promoted the documentary about girls' educational equity through screenings and questions and Q&As, so I got to coordinate some of those. I worked on a blog. That was one of the things that I forgot I did about the documentary. A large part of the Media and Identity project was not just the project itself, but it was also an opportunity for us to work on recruitment and diverse recruitment, kind of like you all alluded to. So we wanted to get a sample that really reflected the way young people in America really are. So a diversity, not only of race, but of region, sexual and gender identity. So we were trying to see how we could bring in a wide variety of students. So we worked on culturally sensitive recruiting procedures, developed interview protocol, and then even after I left Wellesley, we did follow-up interviews with some of the people who participated in our survey. So even after I had graduated and gone home, I got to interview people. I was just at my house on Skype, talking to some of our subject and study participants, and then of course analyzing the data as it came in. Yeah, I warned students that the internship is actually, it's technically a year, but you can go on and on if you want to. So just a few tidbits about the documentary, which is online. You can access it. It's free, and you can disseminate it to any of your networks. We really want to focus on why the media and educational researchers really have forgotten the educational inequities of girls of color. There's a lot of focus on boys of color, but girls of color are actually just a little bit behind them and way, way behind white girls and white boys. And so, but for some reason, the funding and the media attention just doesn't hit that gap. And I call it the empathy gap because we're at this forum with Schott Foundation for Public Education, and they kept talking about it as an empathy gap because it's, for some reason there's something more, the public just wants to feel for certain groups of people more, and there's certain other groups that just kind of fall by the wayside. They think they're fine, they're doing just fine. So that's why it's part of the title. So, and during this process, I also worked with another student while I was doing this documentary, and we got to interview the Boston Public Schools Achievement Gap director, and we asked him, okay, what do you think about the gender, equity gap? And he said, okay, that's not actually a category in our schools. It's only racial gap, disability gap, and ELL. And so they don't look at gender, and especially not the intersections of race and gender. And that was something that was kind of disappointing. But he also had me talking to there's actually an officer called the Gender Equity Officer there, but I guess that person has a position, but it doesn't go into the policy part. And so there's a lot of conversations that we had, and I felt like he had to explain himself on this documentary. And maybe some things, kind of seeped in there, who knows.
What is ELL?
English as a second language. English language learner, that's the... Yeah, so the point of this documentary, which is funded by the Schott Foundation for Public Education, was to increase dialogue with educators, with policymakers, with educators. We basically were also at the schools. We interviewed, staff, counselors, teachers, mentors and mentees. How do these mentors, really impact girls of color in their educational progress? And it was a 30-minute documentary. Check it out. That's the website, and I can also email you the link. And I loved how at our first screening at the Harrowby House, and Laylee was moderating it. And then Temple just took away the Q&A like such a pro. I was just so proud. So it was also disseminated at these different places too, at the Jim Brigham Learning Training Institute, National Institute of School Time Summer Seminars, Northeastern, Schott Foundation, and also the APA conference, in which Temple also came and co-presented. It was in Washington, D.C., and don't know if you want to say anything about that conference.
Just being able to, and we're running out of time, we did so much, but just being able to come right out of undergrad and already be presenting at APA, and to have that already on my CV as I was applying to grad school.
What is APA?
I'm sorry, American Psychological Association. So the premier association for psychologists. I got to present there right out of undergraduate school and put that on my resume as I was applying to graduate school. So that's a little selfish, but it was very important. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of that other project that we were involved in which Temple was there at the very beginning, it was mainly a recruitment project. So we had another project at the centers that had been trying to recruit online participants, and they would get numbers like 200, 300, 400. And I remember thinking, oh, we can do better than that. We just have a higher goal than that. So our goal was 1,000, but we ended up getting over 2,300 people from 47 states and over 26 countries. And Temple was actually really helpful in trying to figure out these recruitment strategies to try to get these different
segments of society. So we hit all 50 states, emailing, colleges, universities, professors that had classes that had anything to do with identity or media or anything else. I mean, we also emailed professors that were in engineering and in business, and just so that we can also strategically get as many voices as we can, because a lot of times research is all done through psychology subject polls. I don't know if you kind of knew about that. A lot of studies are, like 200 people, from psychology in an undergraduate class. Yeah. And this kind of tried to diversify to people from social sciences, natural sciences, business, and I think we were, pretty successful. And let's see. So some of just quickly, some of the findings, I have 2 minutes. I only have 2 more slides, I think. So participants who were female, adolescent, Black, or Hispanic were using smartphones to taking the online survey. So that really helped us understand, methodologically speaking, that we need to design surveys that are smartphone friendly. So that was really huge. Also, Facebook advertisements were really promising to get LGBT young people. So a lot of LGBT people are out online, but maybe not in person. And so that was a really great way to get them to take the survey. So I talked about the outside the psychology poll, and then word of mouth. Email forwards are especially important for female adolescents aged 12 to 17 and Black participants. So those are some of the groups that you really want to outreach, hard to reach groups. And so we're hoping we have a paper that we've been submitting to different journals that detail these recruitment strategies that we hope will be important for other researchers to use. Now this is part of the chapter that that Temple and I worked on together.
So very quickly, because I know we're basically out of time, but these are some of the quotes that came up as I was talking to some of the participants who I had an opportunity to spend more conversation with. Certain themes came up that we were able to turn into a book chapter on a book about women of color in social media that actually was published just recently. So some examples are Tumblr. So a blogging site is a place that supported my learning in terms of my identities, ethnic identity, racial identity, gender identity. So talking about the things that they were able to learn and share online. I mean, there's always the people who post things that are not like funny, but it's actually not, because it's a joke about women or people of color. It's the whole get back in the kitchen thing. It's like, can you not? If it's just a regular thing for one person, I'll just unfriend them. So that was one of the things that we found, that people can sort of turn away or filter comments that are racist or sexist or upsetting. Can't do that in real life. But online, some of our participants who are marginalized were able to find their people, be out, and share with other people who were like them. So it's a great project.
Just a couple more quotes. And these are some of the products that have come out of the Media and Identity Project. And if you want a copy of any of these things, we definitely can give them to you. And you can also email us. Thank you so much for your attention. We look forward to talking about it.
Hi, we're going to stand here. I'm used to talking to 36th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who are pretty rowdy. I doubt you all are going to cause me any trouble. And Natalie and I can talk loud, and we wanted to be together anyhow. And we don't have PowerPoints. As Nadia will explain to you, I'm a reluctant user of PowerPoints. I've been at the center since 1992, so I've been here 25 years. And the research project that I began with, that Natalie joined me in, started in 2005. It ran for 10 years. It was funded by the National Institute of Justice, which is the research arm of the Justice Department. And Natalie joined me in the 09-10 academic year. So we're talking about stuff that happened a while ago. My research was on interventions to precursors to teen dating violence. The Justice Department decided that they had enough problems with batterer treatment programs and interventions that were working in domestic violence, and they wanted to start a lot earlier. So they started, my research partner, Bruce Taylor, who's a criminologist and is at NORC, which is part of the University of Chicago, we decided, based on all the decades of work I had done on sexual harassment, that we were going to define sexual harassment as a precursor to teen dating violence, because it's the public performance of gendered violence. It happens in front of other people in the halls and the parking lots, and the, 6th and 7th graders aren't dating. I mean, they don't exactly go anywhere together, but they, affiliate, right? It might be for 2 periods, it might be for a week. But nonetheless, we decided to focus on, and what my research has been on, before I even came to Wellesley in '92, actually starting in 1979, I started doing research on sexual harassment in schools, peer-to-peer sexual harassment. And I worked for the Massachusetts Department of Ed, as I like to say, hardly a feminist advocacy agency. Right? So I was pretty confident that the phenomenon of sexual harassment existed, peer-to-peer, and that in fact it could be this precursor to how you learn to treat somebody, and you get away with it in public. So if you can do it in public, what's to say you're not going to do it in private, right? So Bruce and I got over 10 years of funding from the Justice Department because they believed us. So, and we started first in the greater Cleveland area in 3 suburbs, Shaker Heights, Cleveland Heights, and Berea, Ohio. We had a sample of 1,800 kids in about 15 schools, 6th and 7th grade. We had 2 different kinds of interventions and a control group. And then we in 2008, got into the New York City schools. And we started out with 54 schools. We ended with 30. We had a sample size of 3,000 kids, 6th, 7th, and eventually we included 8th graders. So when Natalie joined me, it was like full steam ahead, because we started in New York in '08. Natalie joined me in the fall of '09. She'll tell you all the things that she got involved with. And I just want to give you a kind of fast forward highlights of what happened over these 10 years of doing this research. Bruce and I did focus groups with students. Of course, we had to get extra parental permission to do that. We also had parental permission, of course, to even administer surveys to the kids. It's called the Institutional Review Board. You have to pass these things that you're not going to harm anybody. And so we had 4 different sets of interventions. We had interventions that only happened in the classroom. A second set was interventions that happened school-wide, so like posters and something that's called mapping, hotspot mapping. I can explain that later. That's school-wide interventions. We had a third arm of the research, which was the combined classroom lessons plus school-wide interventions, and the 4th one was the control group. And as we got to the fall of 2011, and we were getting this really good and effective data, and the next thing we know, we're asked to brief the Senate Judiciary Committee. So when a federal agency, all these people came out of the Justice Department to control us. So it's called Main Justice. This is like where unfortunately where Jeff Sessions sits, but that's Main Justice, where the researchers are, is a dumpy little building somewhere else. And so we had to go to Capitol Hill, and there must have been 7 people from the Justice Department with us, because they have to be very careful what they say to Congress people. Now, none of the congressmen actually showed up, but they sent their aides. No, you wouldn't expect a congressman to show up. But I was so excited because we were in this room that I thought was the Watergate room. So, because it said the Senate Judiciary Committee, right? So I assume it's Watergate, that I'm going to walk in here. But no, it wasn't the Watergate room, that was in another building. But it was the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Patrick Leahy was the chairman of it, and Al Franken was at the time on the Senate Judiciary Committee, so they all sent their staff, and so Bruce and I, this was pretty exciting. This has not happened before to the Justice Department, which funds about 300 projects a year, to have one singled out to brief the Senate Judiciary Committee. Now, this was on the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, which did pass at that point. And then the next sort of landmark that came along was April 30th, 2014. And the White House had this task force under Obama, under President Obama, called, on ending campus sexual assault. And they had lots of hearings, they had lots of committee people. And I'm actually in South Dakota at the time, giving a talk to domestic violence and sexual assault people. And the report comes out, and I'm reading, like, they had good wireless in this little motel where I was. And I had thought, well, I want you all, actually, it's in your packet. Now, where is it in your packet, Natalie?
On the right side.
On the right side, and it's paper clipped together, I believe.
Yes.
And if you pull it out, see, isn't this more fun than PowerPoint? You get to hold something in your hand. So on that first page, I can see what you got there, Kathy. On the first page, so the White House issues this report. I don't have a color version of it. It's called the first report on the White House on protecting students from campus sexual assault. And there was a link on page like 11. And it said, today the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is releasing a report on an analysis of 140 interventions that work to reduce sexual violence. So I click on the link. And that's what the second of the 3 panels are on that first page for you. And I click on the link, and I realize that, and you'll see the third panel, the one that's closest to you in blue, lists shifting boundaries as the most effective. Out of 140, 2 were deemed most effective. Shifting boundaries, which was meant for 6th and 7th graders, and safe dates, that was meant for 8th and 9th graders. And my first thought is, what are middle school kids doing in the White House report on ending campus sexual assault? And the answer is that of all the interventions, so do the math, you can subtract, of all the interventions that were used on college campuses, they either didn't have the data, or they were ineffective, or they actually reinforced bad ideas and bad attitudes. And so what we have going on college campuses essentially is inept, and insipid, just every sort of negative word you can think of, because either they don't have funding, or they bring in a charismatic speaker, and that's somebody's idea about, rape prevention. And so this, otherwise I guess these people who put together the report wouldn't have had anything, so they had to start looking in high school and middle school, and then they found that shifting boundaries was very effective, because we have lots of data to say that it is effective. So that was a fairly thrilling but stunning turn of events, right? I was happy, but I felt really bad that, all these things have been going on college campuses that don't help. And then we also clipped together there is what shifting boundaries looks like. It's not fancy. It's a free PDF on the internet. I can't tell you how often, at least once a week, I get people writing me. Yesterday it was from some juvenile probation officer in Virginia. Last week it was some mental health people in California. They want to know what they have to do to use it. And I said, well, you just download it. What do you mean? What do you have to do to use it? Well, do we have to give you credit? I said, well, that'd be a good idea. I did copyright it with the Library of Congress. But, you can use it, but you don't have to pay us anything. But you would have to, we do make available on my website, on our WCW, we have a link to all the posters that we used, and we have information about what DVD we purchased. We only used 3 to 5 minutes of it. So it is something that's available to people, and people, sexual assault, domestic violence centers, schools, mental health agencies, even yesterday the probation department. There are lots of ways that people find that maybe this is effective. Bruce and I keep writing academic articles, and we're trying to do some more research. We're going to write some proposals. Though it's not too promising to write to the federal government anymore. And I'm afraid right now Trump is pulling us out of the Paris, yes. So I was looking at my phone. So in any event, now Natalie's going to, before you all go to look at your phones and look at the distressing news, Natalie's going to tell you about what she did and what we continue to do together.
Yeah. So it's really exciting for me to be here and to take this trip down memory lane. And and also to have an opportunity to express to you all, and I hope I'm able to do so, the impact that this internship has had, that it had on my college career here, that it has had on my professional life and also my personal life, as Nan and I have remained in close relationship. So as she mentioned, I joined in the fall of 2009, and my sister, Wellesley chorus member, had the internship the year before me, and she raved about it. So that's how I heard about it, not through speed dating exactly, but still from another student. So that's how I got on board. And as Nan mentioned, when I got on board, this project was in the thick of it. So it was right in the middle of the bustle. So it felt very real straight out of the gate. I felt like I was doing something really significant, really concrete, watching this project be rolled out and also participating in it. So I was editing and compiling packets of lessons for teachers that were going directly into the schools. I did manage to convert Nan to PowerPoint. It was somewhat of an uphill battle, as she indicated, but it was important. I felt like I knew the research backwards and forwards because I was looking through and editing her speeches on this research and also on some other topics that I'll come back to later, and then had the opportunity to talk with her about everything that I was reading, her words that I was reading on those topics. We gave a presentation to Massachusetts Rape Crisis Centers staff on this research and the findings that we had at that time, and helped them understand the applicability of this research to their work, which is what was a very formative, exciting experience for me and informed what I later went on to do, which I'll get back to also. And then ultimately, when we got data back from student focus groups, I was coding and analyzing that data. And that was some exciting stuff because they were telling us, the students were telling us, this intervention was helping them feel like they were more likely to go to a teacher if they witnessed something or if they experienced something, and that the mapping of the campus, of the school itself, the mapping of the school was really impactful for them and made them realize the experiences they were having in school that they had not necessarily been conscious of up until that point. It helped them have more conversations about this with each other and within the culture. So that was really exciting to be able to code that data and to get that data back. So following my time in this internship, we've remained in relationship. So we take regular walks with her dog, Candy, who I have a bond with. I took care of him for a week while she was away. And when I want dog time in my life, I don't have a dog, unfortunately, but I ask her to come over and hang out with her dog. And I also use that, those times that we get to walk together as an opportunity to ask her what she thinks, because I value her perspective so much. And she's been able to, and this internship has been able to kind of introduce me to a really powerful counter-narrative. She has a way of thinking about what the dominant paradigm or how something is framed or conceptualized versus what is really going on the ground. And that has really stuck with me in everything I've done since this internship. So just two fun examples. So in my doctoral psychology program, my professor was talking about bullying, and bullying is something that I learned a lot about from the speeches that I was reading and the conversations I'd had with Nan, because the paradigm of bullying is not taking into consideration assault, gender violence, and all these sort of subsuming ideas that get kind of amassed into this non-legal idea of bullying. And so this idea was being presented in class, and I had the confidence to raise my hand and to take issue with it and to bring up what I had learned in this internship. And the professor was not entirely thrilled with me about that, but my peers were very appreciative, and my peers were doing clinical work in the schools, and so this felt very relevant to them. To be able to think about this framework this way. And then the other example would be election night, which still feels very fresh. In November, we sat together at the watch party across campus, and while everyone was celebrating and cheering I sat down next to Nan and I said, tell me what's happening. And she was clear on where this was headed, long before the party caught up with where this was headed, while I was still in denial myself. And so that thread has carried forward from this internship into my work in campus sexual violence. So I'm in a doctoral program in psychology. I've been working for 2 years at Brandeis in the counseling center in concert with the Rape Crisis Center, helping survivors of campus sexual assault individually and in groups, and having this idea of the counter narrative, what's really going on the ground, and being able to believe people about that has made me effective with them and made it possible for me to be helpful.
Well, I also wanted to say that Natalie taught me how to text.
Right.
And she actually texted me from that class she was talking about, or emailed me.
I think I emailed you.
Yeah, emailed me. And so,
They're not the same thing.
all right. Really, my students taught me how to turn my phone on and off. We had to go into a courtroom, and the judge told us to turn the phone off. And I was like panicked. I didn't know how to turn my phone off. So, in any event, we do this sort of, and Natalie kept texting me all night long on election night. I left at 9:30. It was clear to me Hillary was going to lose. And Natalie, even though they were blocking the signals in there, if any of you were there, they jammed the signals so the press could have unabated. That's why they jammed the signals, because it would have been overwhelming for the server to carry everybody's. So Natalie would text me. I got these texts, I don't know, until 12:30 or so, and about how sad it was getting in there. And and I just remember leaving and telling her at 9:30, it's over, and that's why I left. I was with Susan Reverby in the Women's Studies Department, Women and Gender Studies. So in any event, we left together because we were just sure it was bad.
So now we go to marches.
Well, yeah, right. We do go to marches, and we text each other from the women's march.
With the dog.
And with the dog. Well, he comes with me. And she texts me her brigade that she's marked, pictures. So I do know how to send pictures too now.
Are you still doing Bullyproof? Is that still available?
It is. I'm having this. Yes, Bullyproof still exists. Bullyproof actually got evaluated in Austin, Texas. So the effectiveness data about Bullyproof came out. I don't really do anything with it.
Right.
We sell Bullyproof. So does the National Education Association.
Well, I bought it.
Great. Thank you.
25 years ago. I tried to give it to, or whenever it
Yeah,
came out,
yeah,
I
close.
tried to give it to my son's private school in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
The headmistress wouldn't take it.
Mm.
And so I gave it to another Wellesley person who went to high school with me, ahead of me, and here ahead of me, and who now lives in my building.
Oh.
And her name's Betty Cartwright, and she went to the only public Montessori school in Houston about 10 years ago, before she retired, just after she retired rather, and gave it without going through the school board or anything, and gave them Bullyproof, and it's a bilingual Montessori school.
Mm.
And 10 years later, I'm over at my housekeeper's house nearby. Her children went to this school. Her grandchildren go to the school, so she can tend to them after school. And she has given Sebastian what for? And she is lacing into him. And after about 3 minutes, he says, Abuela, basta, basta. Right from Bullyproof, 10 years later.
Oh, that's very nice. It's a nice story. We don't really track where things are used. We don't have the capacity to do that. We used to be able to track who bought them, who bought copies of it. I remember one time they sold it to every Bureau of Indian Affairs school. There were 200 of them in the country. But the LA schools bought a lot too, but do they get used? We don't know. How effective are they? We don't know. So it's very costly to do effectiveness research. And so the amount of money that Bruce and I had from the Justice Department, in our last years was over $1 million. It started at $450, then the next time it was $850, and then I think it was $1.2 million. So you can see how much money it costs to do, scientific, random assignment, multiple arms of research, and then looking at effectiveness by measuring surveys that using surveys that the kids take, and then we had focus groups for adults, focus groups for students. So it's very costly. So there isn't the kind of money to do evaluation research of the impact of Bullyproof or any of the other ones that I worked on.
We send it to Washington.
Yeah.